At family dinner, my sister boasted about her expensive purchases, showing off a diamond necklace. Dad chuckled. Funny, I saw that same one in a buy now, pay later ad. Her husband's fork dropped. You said it was paid in full, he whispered. Then Mom asked. I should have known something was off when Alina texted me that morning. Don't be late for dinner. Mom worked hard on this. Not a can't wait to see you. Or even a looking forward to catching up. Just a directive, like she was managing an event instead of a family dinner. Typical. I sighed, locking my phone and tossing it onto the passenger seat as I drove through Pittsburgh's cold November streets. The sky was that dull, grayish white that threatened snow but never delivered, and the streetlights had already flickered on even though it wasn't even 5 yet. Family dinners had become a rare occasion ever since I moved into my own apartment on the other side of the city. It wasn't that I hated them, exactly. It was just complicated. Mom always tried too hard to keep the peace. Dad didn't try at all. Alina was exhausting. And Marcus? Well, Marcus was just there, orbiting around her like a silent, well-dressed planet. I pulled up to our parents' house, the same two-story colonial we grew up in, with its neatly trimmed hedges and porch light that had been broken for at least a decade. The second I stepped inside, the smell of garlic mashed potatoes and roasted chicken hit me, bringing back memories of childhood Sundays. Mom was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, face flushed from standing over the stove. Oh good, you're here. She wiped her hands on a towel and immediately reached out to fix my hair, like I was still 10 years old. How's work, sweetheart? Fine, I said, stepping back before she could fuss too much. Smells amazing in here. She beamed, but before she could launch into a full conversation, Alina's voice cut through the house. Lillian, you finally made it. I turned to see my sister standing in the dining room doorway, one manicured hand on her hip. She was wearing a deep burgundy dress, her hair in perfect waves, and makeup that looked professionally done. As always, she looked like she'd walked off the cover of a magazine. Yeah, traffic, I muttered. Alina just raised an eyebrow. You should have left earlier. Here we go. Nice to see you too, Alina, I said flatly. She didn't acknowledge the sarcasm, just turned back toward the dining room where Marcus was already seated at the long wooden table, scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up when I walked in. Dad was already in his usual spot at the head of the table, swirling a glass of whiskey. So, how's the big shot publishing job? He asked. I shrugged. Same as always. He smirked. So you're still drowning in books you don't care about. Something like that. Mom clapped her hands together, forcing a smile. All right, let's eat. We settled in, the conversation starting out light enough. Small talk about the weather, updates on Mom's garden, Dad complaining about his golf buddies. But then, as expected, Alina took over. So, she said, dramatically brushing her hair behind her ear. Marcus and I just got back from Paris. Mom lit up. Oh, how wonderful. Did you see the Eiffel Tower? Alina scoffed like it was a ridiculous question. Of course. We stayed at the Hotel Plaza Athene. You should see the view from our suite. Dad smirked. Must have cost a fortune. Marcus cleared his throat. It was worth it. Alina beamed, reaching out to squeeze his hand like they were in a romantic movie. He spoils me. I rolled my eyes and focused on my food. Alina had been like this our entire lives. Always needing to be admired, to be envied. She wasn't just doing well, she had to be doing better. And Marcus? He just went along with it. Then, as she reached up to tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear, I saw it. The necklace. A diamond necklace so big and so obnoxiously shiny that it caught the dining room light at every angle. Wow, Mom breathed. That's gorgeous. Alina smiled like she'd been waiting for someone to mention it. Thank you. Marcus got it for me. A little surprise gift. Marcus kept his eyes on his plate, cutting into his steak with slightly more force than necessary. Dad chuckled, shaking his head. Funny, he mused. I saw that same necklace in a buy now, pay later ad last week. Marcus's fork froze midair. Then, it clattered onto his plate. You said it was paid in full, he whispered, his voice sharp, cutting through the room. Alina's smile didn't waver, but there was something tight about it now. It is. She glanced at Dad, shooting him a look. Dad must be mistaken. Dad just sipped his whiskey, clearly enjoying himself. Maybe, he said, shrugging. Or maybe I've just got a good memory for things like that. Marcus turned back to Alina, jaw clenched. Alina. His voice was low, dangerous. Did you finance that necklace? The air in the room shifted. Alina laughed, but it was a forced, brittle sound. Marcus, don't be ridiculous. I'm not being ridiculous, he snapped. How much did it cost? Her grip tightened around her wine glass. It doesn't matter. It does matter, Marcus said, his voice rising. How much, Alina? She exhaled sharply, her face suddenly flushed. It was on a payment plan. But so what? I was going to pay it off. It's not a big deal. Marcus let out a bitter laugh, rubbing his temples. I specifically asked you if it was paid for, he said, shaking his head. And you lied to me. Again. Mom reached for her wine, looking like she wanted to disappear. Dad, on the other hand, leaned back in his chair, thoroughly entertained. Mom cleared her throat. Sweetheart, are you in trouble financially? A muscle in Marcus's jaw twitched. Oh, she's in trouble, all right. He turned to me. Tell her, Alina. Or should I? Marcus. She has over $40,000 in credit card debt. The room fell into stunned silence. My stomach dropped. Even Dad's smirk faltered for a second. Alina's face went pale. Marcus, you lied to me, he said, his voice barely above a whisper now, but somehow even angrier. You promised me you were done with this. Mom gasped, clutching her chest. 40,000. I saw the statements. Marcus interrupted. The minimum payments aren't even keeping up with the interest, Alina. I stared at my sister. Jesus, Alina. How did this even happen? She shot me a glare, as if I was the problem. Oh, shut up, Lillian. Not everyone lives like a damn hermit. I scoffed. I live within my means. Maybe you should try it. Her expression twisted in anger, but before she could retort, Marcus pushed back from the table and stood up. You know what? He said, running a hand through his hair. I can't do this anymore. Alina's face crumbled. Wait, what does that mean? Marcus exhaled slowly. I think I have to leave. And just like that, dinner was over. Alina shot up from her chair so fast that her wine glass nearly tipped over. Marcus, don't be ridiculous, she said, her voice high and strained. Marcus didn't sit back down. He braced his hands on the back of his chair, fingers digging into the wood. I'm not being ridiculous, he said quietly. I'm being done. Mom looked between them, eyes wide with panic. Marcus, sit down. We're in the middle of dinner. Marcus ignored her. His eyes were locked on Alina's, his entire body tense. Do you have any idea what you've done? Alina scoffed. What I've done? She let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. It's just a damn necklace, Marcus. I can pay it off. Marcus's laugh was hollow, humorless. Oh, really? With what money? Because last I checked, our savings account is empty. The one we were supposed to be using for a house. Gone. The credit cards? Maxed out. And now, you're lying to my face about this. Alina's face turned red. Marcus, lower your voice, she hissed, glancing toward Mom and Dad. We don't need to air our private business at the dinner table. Dad, who had been watching with the same detached amusement of someone observing a train wreck, finally spoke up. Seems like it's already out in the open, sweetheart. Alina shot him a glare, but Dad just sipped his whiskey. I didn't want to bring this up here, Marcus continued, shaking his head. But you left me no choice. You lied to me. Again. And this time, I think I'm done pretending it's fine. Alina's lips parted slightly, as if the weight of his words had finally hit her. Her voice was smaller when she spoke again. Marcus, you don't mean that. Marcus exhaled through his nose, rubbing his temples. I don't know what I mean anymore, Alina. All I know is that I can't keep doing this. Mom, clearly desperate to fix things, set down her fork and reached for Alina's hand. Honey, if you're struggling, we can help. Alina snatched her hand away like she had been burned. I don't need help, she snapped. Marcus let out a bitter laugh. You don't need help? Are you kidding me? He gestured toward me. Ask Lillian. I begged her to talk to you last time. She told me it was pointless. And guess what? She was right. All eyes turned to me. I sighed, suddenly wishing I had just stayed home. I told you, Marcus, I muttered. Alina doesn't listen to anyone. She never has. Alina's face twisted with rage. Oh, screw you, Lillian, she spat. You think you're so much better than me? Living in your little shoebox apartment, wearing the same ugly boots for the last 3 years? God, you're so boring. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, well, at least my boots are paid off. Dad let out a sharp bark of laughter, and Mom shot him a look. Harold, not helping, she hissed. He raised his hands in mock surrender. Hey, I'm just enjoying the show. Marcus, however, wasn't amused. This isn't a joke, he snapped at Dad, then turned back to Alina. This is our life. Or at least it was. Alina's breath hitched. Was. A silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. You don't mean that, she repeated, her voice cracking slightly this time. Marcus rubbed his jaw, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly he shook his head. I think I do. For the first time, I saw real fear in Alina's eyes. Marcus, she whispered, reaching for his arm. Please, we can fix this. Marcus pulled away. How, he asked, voice hoarse. How are we supposed to fix this, Alina? You won't stop. You can't stop. Every time you tell me you'll change, I believe you. And then I find out you've racked up another 20 grand in debt behind my back. You don't even care what it's doing to us. Alina blinked rapidly, like she was trying to hold back tears. That's not true, she said quietly. Marcus just stared at her, exhausted. It is true, and I can't live like this anymore. Mom reached for her wine glass again, taking a long sip. Oh my God, she muttered. Alina stood there, chest rising and falling quickly, her hands shaking slightly. For a moment, I thought she might yell, might scream, might hurl her plate against the wall. But instead, she just whispered, I just wanted to have nice things. Nobody spoke. Marcus's shoulders sagged. He looked so tired. I know, he said finally. But at what cost, Alina? Tears welled up in Alina's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Instead, she clenched her jaw, straightened her spine, and turned to Mom. Mom, tell him he's overreacting. Mom's lips pressed together. Sweetheart, I don't think he is. Alina recoiled like she had been slapped. You're taking his side? Mom let out a slow breath. I'm not taking anyone's side, she said carefully. But I think maybe it's time to be honest, with yourself and with Marcus. Alina shook her head, eyes darting between all of us like we had suddenly turned into strangers. This is insane, she muttered. You're all acting like I murdered someone. It's just money. Dad scoffed. $40,000 isn't just money, kiddo. It's a damn mess. Alina glared at him. You should be on my side. You used to tell me that money comes and goes. Dad shrugged. Yeah, but I didn't mean you should go out and pretend you're a damn billionaire. Alina let out a strangled noise of frustration, then turned back to Marcus. We can fix this, she pleaded. I can fix this. Marcus looked at her for a long time. Then, finally, he shook his head. I don't think I believe you anymore. Alina flinched. And just like that, everything was different. No more small talk. No more fake smiles. Something had cracked wide open, and there was no way to shove it back into place. The silence stretched on, heavy and painful. Mom just kept sipping her wine. Dad swirled his whiskey like he was watching a particularly good TV drama, and I just sat there, watching my sister's world collapse around her. But the worst part? I wasn't sure if I even felt bad for her. Alina stood frozen, staring at Marcus like she was trying to will him into taking it back. But he didn't. He just looked at her, exhausted, defeated, like a man who had finally reached the end of the rope he'd been gripping for too long. I expected her to yell, to fight, to turn on the waterworks and beg him to reconsider. But she didn't. Instead, she scoffed, crossing her arms. Fine, she said, lifting her chin. If that's how you feel, then leave. But don't act like you're some perfect husband, Marcus. You knew what you were getting into when you married me. Marcus let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, he said, shaking his head. I just didn't know how deep the hole was. Alina's jaw clenched, but she didn't respond. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then Marcus straightened his tie, exhaled sharply, and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times before holding it up for her to see. Guess what, Alina? He said coolly. Your credit cards? They're all frozen. Every last one. Her face paled. What? I called the banks this morning, he continued. Reported the accounts as compromised. They're locked. No more shopping sprees. No more expensive surprises. Alina shot out of her chair. Marcus, you can't. Oh, I can, he interrupted, tucking his phone back into his pocket. And I did. You've spent our money like it was Monopoly cash for years. Now, it stops. Her breath hitched. That's my credit. Wrong, Marcus snapped. It was our debt. But I won't let it keep ruining my life. He grabbed his coat from the back of his chair. And since you love luxury so much, you're going to have to figure out how to afford it. Without me footing the bill. Alina opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time in her life, she had nothing to say. Mom looked like she might pass out. Marcus, are you sure? Yeah, he said, cutting her off gently. I'm sure. Then he turned back to Alina, his face unreadable. I'll send you the paperwork in the morning. Alina's hands curled into fists. You're divorcing me over money? Marcus met her glare without flinching. No, he said simply. I'm divorcing you over lies. And then, without another word, he walked out the front door. The room stayed silent for a long time. Alina stood there, shaking, her face a mix of fury and panic. Then she turned to Dad, her last hope. Say something. Dad just exhaled through his nose and took another sip of whiskey. Guess you should have checked that by now. Pay later fine print, huh? Mom shot him a sharp look, but even she didn't argue. I pushed my chair back and stood up. Well, I said, grabbing my coat, this was fun. Alina's head snapped toward me. You think this is funny? She spat. I shrugged. No, I think it's sad. But I also think you had this coming. Alina let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Of course you do. You've always been jealous of me. I blinked. Then I laughed, genuinely laughed. Jealous? Of what, Alina? I gestured around the room. Of a marriage you just ran into the ground? Of 40 grand in debt you can't pay? Of the fact that you just lost the one person who actually gave a damn about you? Her face twisted in rage. Screw you, Lillian. I just smiled. You already did, remember? Every time you bragged. Every time you put me down. Every time you made me feel like crap for not having a perfect life. But guess what, Alina? You don't have a perfect life either. You never did. She went still. I didn't wait for a response. I just grabbed my bag, gave Mom a quick kiss on the cheek, nodded at Dad, and walked toward the door. But before I stepped out, I turned back one last time. Good luck, Alina, I said. You're gonna need it. Then I walked out into the cold November night, leaving her to face the mess she made, alone. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. My sister spent years pretending to be rich while secretly drowning in debt. At family dinner, Dad casually pointed out that her diamond necklace was a buy now, pay later purchase. Her husband realized she had been lying to him about their finances. Turns out, she had $40,000 in credit card debt. He froze all her accounts on the spot, told her she was on her own, and walked out. She tried to play the victim, but nobody backed her up. I left feeling like justice had finally been served.